Hello everybody, my name is Peter, but you probably know me as Pan. And for those who don't know me, I am an indie animator and storyboard artist working on my own pilot called Swift Spark and the Defense 5. And I am starting this new series, which hopefully some point gets to grow out into a podcast of sorts, all about indie animation. And by that I mean my experience as an indie animator and what it has been like for me, and my opinions and my thoughts on certain indie animation related subjects. So at the end of the day, you could maybe take these videos with a grain of salt, because it's just me talking about my own perspective, which is subjective and therefore maybe not fully based on fact. And whether or not you end up appreciating my opinions and points of view at the end of the day is entirely up to you. At some point, I do hope to have this podcast grow, because at this point it's just me rambling into a microphone with some notes loosely typed out in front of me, which you'll probably be able to tell from the numerous jump cuts that will undoubtedly be happening in this video that it's going to be a whole lot of rambling. But at some point, I would like to grow this to the point where other creators feel inclined to join me in these rambling sessions. And I guess this video series as a whole is inspired by a live stream I got to do with Frederator a few weeks ago, which was all about indie animation, where we just sat around with a couple of indie animators and just discussed our original animated projects. But there were several questions that we were given that we ended up not getting to, and I figured it would be fun to start this series off by answering some of them. And I guess the first one I wanted to focus on today is, what advice can you give to those who are interested in creating their own animated series but don't know where to start? And I guess that today is not just about creators who don't know where to start, but also the audience who doesn't really know what indie animation really means. Because, indie animation is basically, it's just animation, but mostly on the internet. For example, Ed's World is a very old and classic example I can give. That is, for me, one of the very first indie animated series I watched in the early 2010s. And at this point, it's grown so much bigger than what Ed's World was back in the day. And at this point, I feel like the indie animation industry is a better way to call it than just this small indie internet community that is an insignificant speck of dust in the larger scheme of the media world. And I personally had a kind of a rocky start, because I started 11 years ago on DeviantArt, and back then for me it was just a hobby, because I wanted to become an author. Books. I had no intention of becoming an indie animator, let alone an animator as a whole. And so that is kind of my first point. Like, if you don't know where to start, just start. Just anything creative, just whether it's drawing OCs, hell, even if it's cringy Sonic OCs, who gives a shit? Just start doing something creative, and if you really have to drive into passion for it to end up doing it as more than a hobby, it will come. The ideas, the inspiration, it may take time. For me, it took a decade to get to a point where finally I know what I want to do as a professional creative. And it is entirely possible that at the end of the day, you're like, okay, maybe this will really not become anything more than a hobby for me, and that's okay too. And it's okay if you need a decade, maybe even longer, to figure out whether you want to do it as a professional or as a hobbyist. And considering today's video is all about the advice I would give to beginning animators who want to start their own animated series, today's sponsor is the best advice I could give. You've undoubtedly heard of Skillshare before, and they are an online learning platform that offers thousands of courses in all sorts of creative fields. For example, I followed a course on how to create a pitch Bible for an animated series. So if you're interested in learning how to make a pitch Bible yourself, or animation, video editing, creative writing, or pretty much anything else you can come up with, Skillshare undoubtedly has the course for you. All you have to do is follow the link in the description and sign up, and you get 1 free month of Skillshare on me. How's that? And maybe for me this doesn't just apply to completely beginning artists, but also like studio animators who are already active in the animation industry who want to make this switch to indie but just don't know where to start or don't know if it's even a thing. And right now, indie animation is powered by social media, and social media over the past decade has become this incredibly powerful thing to the point where traditional media is feeling threatened by YouTube and other forms of new media that social media is a part of, where you see, television networks migrating over to YouTube because they get more views there than they get on the actual TV channel. And whilst that has its advantage that now we have this tool that allows us to have this reach to this whole new audience that the early days of indie animation just didn't have, it also comes with the downsides that it is social media, and these algorithms are incredibly fickle, and most of the time the cards are stacked against animation as a whole. So that kind of leads into my next point, that young artists are intimidated by, there's this handful of wildly successful productions that actually are at the level of quality you would expect from Netflix or from Disney or from a different animation studio that already produces these with millions of dollars of budget per season, maybe even per episode. Disclaimer, most animated series don't have millions of dollars per episode, but there are some. So, it's just a quick disclaimer. But that also comes with the downside of the audience who doesn't really know how this works. And they're only seeing A and B, and they're assuming that they're the same thing. That indie animators right out of the gate can produce content that does rival Netflix just because there's this 1 or 2 other productions, indie productions, that do that. And that is where I get incredibly annoyed, because it shows a lack of understanding. Perhaps I don't want to assume it's willful ignorance, but it is ignorance that I'm seeing in this vocal minority surrounding indie animation. And then I'm like, do your research maybe before you start blabbing. And I guess you could say the same thing about me, because these videos are completely unscripted and with zero research, and just me, talking, giving my opinion on a subject. But this is coming from someone who is on the inside of that industry and who is getting certain comments like, I literally have received comments like, I'm not going to give you money until your work looks professional. And I'm just like, how exactly do you expect one animator? Like, I'm not saying it's impossible, because there are There are animators out there who produce professional work by themselves, but with the caveat that that takes months to downright years. And so you can't really, when it comes to an animated series, like for a film, it would be okay, a one-off thing, for it to take years because one person did it. But an animated series, if you take a year or 2-3 years per episode because you're doing everything by yourself, then people are going to start complaining that the episodes aren't coming out fast enough. So that is kind of my point of contention with some, and again, it's a vocal minority of the audience, but then it does reflect back onto other indie artists, indie animators who are like taking those comments to heart, and that is kind of what breaks my heart, that I'm seeing these indie animators who have really good ideas and who are really talented, who are allowing themselves to get intimidated because a small number of people have set that bar way over there based on 1 or 2 animated productions, assuming that everyone can and should be able to meet those standards. And that, at the end of the day, is my point. We finally got there. The second point is, don't feel intimidated by what others are doing. At the end of the day, we want to call it an animation, indie animation industry, but even in professional animation, like professional animation, like studio, standard, traditional animated productions, there is still different companies who are doing different things and focusing on different types of content, and you should just do what feels right for your work. Like, make it your way. Like, if you are a writer, but you can't animate, you're not an artist, you can't draw, you just write scripts, write books, produce those episodes you may have in your mind as written content, and try to distribute those and build an audience around that. And eventually you'll probably make friends who are willing to help you with the artistic part. And if you are an animator but you can't write, try to make friends with people who are writers. And I do immediately have to put in a disclaimer that networking should, and making friends should be genuine, and not only become friends with an animator so they'll work on your project for free, because at the end of the day, you should not expect anyone to want to work for free, especially not in today's financial climate. That is a quick disclaimer I have to add. Like, friendships should never be formed with the intention to only get them to work on your stuff for free. Okay? But my point is, at the end of the day, this industry does need creatives, and creative voices of all kinds. Writers, literal voices with voice actors and animators and artists, and just, I mean, for example, if you are a voice actor, you're not a writer, you're not an animator, you can still create a character. Like, back when I wasn't really that great of an artist yet, I used to make these occasionally I made these doll versions, like maybe with Flash no longer being a thing, that might be a lot more difficult, but like, you could create a if they're still around, because again, Flash no longer being a thing, but these websites that have these dress-up dolls where you can create a character and then just voice them, and eventually you could commission an artist to make a render of your character, and just any way you can get your point across. Like audio dramas, are they still a thing? Like, you could do that with if you have voice actor friends. Like, take your creative skills and tell your story in whatever way you can get it done. And even if you aren't an artist, you know, if you're not good at drawing, you can still draw, you can still make that comic. If you want to tell a story, but you don't want to only write, you want to tell a visual story, make a comic. That's how Swiss Spark started. And just do it, is what I'm saying. Is don't get intimidated by the lucky few who started right, you know, on the right place at the right time, because even those productions took years to get where they are now. And that is what people don't see. People see the success and not the path, the long, arduous path it took to get to that success. And along that path, there will be failures, and it won't happen overnight. And if you are only producing something with the intent to have it be a banger right out the gate, and then maybe you should talk to an animation executive at the Disney or the Warner Brothers, because that's what they want. They only want the success stories, and we want the creativity. And if you feel like that statement is coming off as harsh and ignorant, that's fine. But to me, that is the difference between indie and industry, and that's not saying that creators of animated series, like, the creators are the same at both sides of the fence. The creators are the ones with the passion and the heart, and sure, there are executives who share that passion, but more often than not, we hear stories of animation executives that are so incredibly tone deaf that reveal that at the end of the day, for the people running the company, I wanted to say running the show, but not the animated show, but the financial show, that will always be more important than what our creativity is truly about. And the big difference is that the people running the finances on the indie side still want that creativity, but unfortunately we are very financially strained, and again, only a handful of these productions have managed to get to the level of pay that the industry has, the mainstream animation industry. And that is just something we have to be willing to fight for. And considering the current financial state of the world, I understand that not everyone has the ability, and not everyone can literally afford to fight. But I still do want to give this industry a chance. But you have to understand, as a creator who wants to get into this industry, that it is probably going to take a long while before it's financially viable. And it's going to take a lot of effort to get people on our side. And fortunately, currently, the likes of Netflix and Warner Brothers are doing that job for us. But that also means that you, as an audience member, can't afford to just be passive. And by passive, I mean not just monetary, because that's immediately what people run to, like, oh, you're expecting us to give you money. No, we are expecting you to engage with us in any way you can. If that is money, that is incredible, and I can speak for all indie creators when I say that that is more than we can ask for. But commenting on videos of indie animators producing their animated content, liking them, sharing them, just talking about them. You know, you don't have to buy merch, you don't have to donate to Patreon, you don't have to part with money you don't have, or hell, you don't have to part with money you don't want to part with. But if you don't have the money or don't want to give the money, you could still give your time, because at the end of the day, time is also money, and that engagement helps us more than you think. And that is my third point, is don't be passive, not as a creator and not as an audience member. Is you have to be active and not just expect success to come your way. And as an audience member, you can't expect, by being a passive audience member, that the creators you love will just become successful, because unfortunately, clicking on videos and watching them for 5 to 10 seconds isn't enough anymore, because of how big social media is nowadays. That unfortunately also comes with big oversaturation of content. So if you want to be seen as a creator, you have to stand out from that crowd. So if you think as an audience member that a creator you love truly deserves that, you have to be a cheerleader just as much as you as a creator have to be your own cheerleader for your own content, and have to almost get narcissistic. Like, I personally really, and I think that a lot of creators feel that same way, because that's something that came up in that live stream with Frederator, that we feel uncomfortable almost, that we are constantly talking about ourselves. And that is what I'm trying to do on Twitter, for example, where I know that recent acquisition of Twitter has been very unfortunate, but I'm hesitant about leaving, because I've just built this community that I want to lift up, and I want to participate in this community, and I don't want it to fall apart. And I want to give as much as I take from that community, and that is the only way that indie animation is ever going to become more than just this little YouTube click or this little Twitter thing, and that we are really going to become a voice, the voice to be reckoned with, that we truly are and should be. And so that is, I guess, my final point for creators who don't know, like, maybe they are already working on their pilot or their series, or maybe you're doing shorts or a comic or anything, and you feel like you're not getting heard. Like, come, talk about your work, share your work. Don't only engage with others to promote yourself, but also engage with their work and promote them, and create genuine interest in their work with yourself, and make sure that you are genuinely interested in what they share as well. At the end of the day, sharing costs nothing but your time, and time is still precious, but if you're not doing anything else with that time, you might as well spend it doing something good and being social. So, the TLDW of this video at the end of the day, if I have to sum it up in one sentence points, is 1. It's okay to be all over the place as a new creator and not quite know where your identity as a creator lies just yet. It's okay to take the time to figure that out. 2. Don't be intimidated by what others are doing. Like, don't get intimidated by the big creators. Don't feel like you need to match what they are doing in quality, in style, in frequency. Just do your own thing. 3, whether it is through a visual medium or through audio or written word, any way you feel comfortable sharing your work, do so. And be your own cheerleader, and don't be intimidated, again, by the quality other content creators are putting out. Because especially when you're just starting out, it doesn't have to be professional. Just create work that makes you happy. And 4, don't be passive, neither as an audience member nor as a content creator. Don't be narcissistic about it. Make sure that engagements and networking is genuine and not just for you to grow your own audience and further your own career, but genuinely engage with other creators you find interesting and want to create this online friendship or relationship with. And as an audience member, don't be passive, as in engage with creators who genuinely want to get to that point where they can rival the animation industry. Like, engage as in talk about them on social media, talk to them on social media. Don't be afraid to talk to your favorite creators, because trust me, I occasionally tweet at voice actors I like and I'm still like when I actually get a reply. So we all feel that way, no matter the size. When we talk to someone we look up to, we all feel starstruck. And just engage, share, like, comment. And on YouTube, watching, and I think actually all social media that have video content, watching it all the way through, even if you're maybe not actively watching, but like, for example, I listen to a lot of content creators I like whilst working on my animated project. And I guess that's passively enjoying. That's about as passive as you can get or should get. But, just making sure you are engaged with the content of the creators you like, as much as have the financial ability to support them in a monetary way. That is the absolute top tier. You can't get any more supportive than through cold hard cash. But the engagement, the just being friendly and talking to them and treating them like they're a human being and not some AI that just shits out art because woo. We are people and we like social interaction. Even the introverted ones, they may, I am introverted myself as well. But online, I'm a little less introverted than in real life. So we may hiss at you at first and be like, people, but we do enjoy it when you talk to us and you're excited about our work, and even if sometimes we may come off as a little hostile. Just understand that creators are under a lot of stress, and it's no excuse for an artist or creator to be unfriendly, but sometimes things that come off as a little unfriendly aren't intended to be that way. And when you do feel like an animator or content creator is being unfriendly, just ask. Because I can guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, it was an accident. And I guess that's the end of the video. I'm pretty surprised I managed to do it in under an hour, because there was a lot of rambling going on. And that's, I guess, why I ended the video with a little summary. But I guess this kind of sets the precedent of what future videos are going to be like. Just me sharing my opinions and my point of view, and whether you agree that is up to you, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again later.